Howdy out there, folks. This is Darius Dale here to present our macro minute for Tuesday, April 12th, 2022. Starting with markets, we have stocks mix this morning with U.S. markets leading, commodities mix with crude oil and ag leading, crypto up small, dollar up small, global bond yields mix with U.S. interest rates lagging. Market moving headlines. We have global growth optimism has sunk to an all-time low with recession fear surging in the Bank of America Fund Manager Survey. And then just in terms of the catalyst calendar, just remember we got earnings season kicking off this week with the banks. We got US CPI out today at 8:30. Fed Governor Brainerd, Fed President Thomas Barkin out of Philly, speaking later today. ECB rate decision on Thursday. Retail sales, jobless claims, Michigan consumer confidence on Thursday as well, followed by Cleveland Fed President Lametta Mester and Philly Fed President Patrick Harker out on Thursday. Big movers this morning at WTI up big on this incremental Russian insurgents. Fears there up 4%. Germany's DAX down 1%. Japan's Nikkei 225 down 2%. Taking it to the charts this morning, US dollar still bullish from the perspective of our volatility adjusted momentum signal in the middle of its probable range with minus 1.2% of downside versus 0.5% of upside. Gold is still neutral. VAM's also in the middle of its probable range with minus 4% downside versus 2% of upside. 10-year nominal Treasury yield, that's bullish. VAM still much more downside than upside in its probable range, 39 basis points of downside versus 6 basis points of upside. High yield OES, bullish. VAM's nearing the upper boundary of its probable range. It's got about 43 basis points of downside versus only 8 basis points of upside there. S&P 500, that is still very narrowly bullish. VAMs. It could very well be neutral VAMs by the end of the day, depending on what happens in asset markets on this CPI report. Consensus is expecting 8.4% there. I have a view that it's likely to surprise to the upside, just given the upside surprises we've seen from all global CPI reports really for the month of March. But still bullish VAMs very narrowly there at the lower boundary of its probable range with 6.8% of upside. If it does shift to neutral, we're going to lose the positive skew in the range, go back to a more normal distribution. And so I'll be aware of that potential change there. Same thing with the VIX. It's currently bearish VAMs at the upper boundary of its probable range with currently 41% downside. But again, it's got the negative skew in its distribution associated with being bearish VAMs. Again, I expect that to change over the coming days and weeks. NASDAQ 100 neutral VAM still at the lower boundary of its probable range with 9.5% of upside. Same thing with Russell 2000 neutral VAMs. At 0.5% of downside versus 7.5% of upside at its probable range here. And so looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum, similar setup with Russell and the NASDAQ, neutral VAMs at the lower boundary of the probable range. Bitcoin's got 18% of upside. Ethereum's got 20% upside there. So be aware of that. On slide Shanghai Composite, bearish VAM still minus 4% of downside in its probable range versus 2.4% of upside. WTI crude oil, again, much more upside than downside there. Neutral VAMs, minus 7.5% of downside in its probable range versus 18% of upside. Ag, neutral VAMs still it's getting towards the upper boundary of its probable range. Got 0.9% of upside with 6.6% of downside there. That's the Bloomberg Agricultural Commodity Index and Bloomberg Industrial Metals Commodity Index here. Neutral VAMs, kind of not quite a fair fight, but 3% of downside in its probable range versus 7.7% of upside is exactly what you would expect to see. Whenever you're in inflation, that's where growth's decelerating and inflation still accelerating. You typically have an outperformance of energy and ag commodities relative to industrial metals, which are clearly more sort of growth oriented and more sensitive to the growth outlook, which continues to decay for not just the U.S. economy, but for the global economy. So with that, Darius Dale presenting our macro minute for Tuesday, April 12th, 2022. Best of luck out there today.